Good evening, I'm Darren Mara. The top stories. South Korea steps up defence preparations after warning Pyongyang may launch an ICBM into the Pacific. Race for Chancellor Angela Merkel firms as Germany's favourite after a televised debate. And a fair dinkum Aussie, Bill Shorten, puts forward proof he's eligible to sit in Parliament. Tensions on the North Korean peninsula are deepening tonight, with South Korea warning that Pyongyang may launch an intercontinental ballistic missile. South Korea's spy chief has told parliamentarians that intelligence agencies continue to see signs of more missile launches, with the possibility of a launch toward the northern Pacific. Well, the UN Security Council will meet tonight for emergency talks for the second time in as many weeks in response to North Korea's latest nuclear test, the most powerful yet. The US has warned that any missile threat will be met with a massive military response.
South Korea is conducting live fire drills today. At secret locations on its east coast, ballistic missiles, F-15 fighter jets. The virtual target, North Korea's Punggye-ri nuclear test site. A month ago, President Trump threatened fire and fury. A week and a half ago, he suggested Kim Jong-un was starting to respect the US. Now,
Mr. President, will you attack North Korea?
The Defense Secretary has briefed the President on his options.
Any threat to the United States or its territories, including Guam or our allies, will be met with a massive military response, a response both effective and overwhelming. We are not looking to the total annihilation of a country, namely North Korea. But as I said, we have many options to do so.
Sunday's test took place at a remote site nestled in the northwest mountains. Pyongyang has used Punggye-ri's testing facility before, but this time the explosion exponentially more powerful than any before it. Seoul says the test suggests a bomb 4 to 5 times more powerful than the one that flattened Nagasaki. Kim Jong-un's drive to guarantee his regime's survival has apparently produced this, a DIY H-bomb, a thermonuclear device small enough to tip an intercontinental ballistic missile.
The bottom line is that a hydrogen bomb is just not that hard to do. You need the basic design ideas, which has been around for a long time. You need the materials, easily within the reach of even the smallest nuclear power.
President Trump once again using Twitter for his foreign diplomacy, describing North Korea as a rogue nation, which has become a great threat and embarrassment to China, admonishing its ally, South Korea, for their talk of appeasement, saying they only understand one thing. Then this, a not-so-veiled threat directed at Beijing.
I am going to draft a sanctions package to send to the president for his strong consideration that anybody that wants to do trade or business with them would be prevented from doing trade or business with us.
China was literally shaken by the blast, with the test site less than 100 kilometers from its border. Now the political aftershocks. The UN's tough new sanctions package comes into force tomorrow. It covers visas for North Korean workers, coal, iron ore and seafood coming across this border, but it doesn't include oil.
And the time has come for all nations, including China, to take action to bring this regime to its senses. Right now, the risk of war on the Korean peninsula is greater than it has been for over 60 years.
South Korea's president has for months been saying talking to Pyongyang was the solution. Now he's poised to approve further deployments of the controversial THAAD US missile defense system.
North Korea had made an absurd tactical mistake by committing a series of provocations, such as launching the ICBM missiles and conducting a nuclear test, which has heightened tensions on the peninsula and is threatening world peace. It will isolate them further.
It's been less than a week since this missile was fired across Japan after 2 ICBM tests in July. An increasingly exasperated Shinzo Abe promising to improve its own missile defences deployed on sea and land. The Air Force has already scrambled a sniffer plane headed in the direction of North Korea to test for radiation. But Pyongyang's residents seem unconcerned about such dangers. The announcement of nuclear test success a cause for jubilation.
It makes me feel really strong.
Now, how can our enemies dare to covet our fatherland? Now we have everything we need.
Since we have our marshal, we don't have to be frightened of anything.
He may not be frightened, but plenty of other countries are now assessing just how fearful they should be. Nastasia Tay, SBS World News.
Defence Minister Maurice Payne will travel to Seoul on Wednesday for talks on the security situation. Well, earlier tonight, China laid a protest with the North Korean embassy in Beijing and also had a warning for the US. SBS Asia correspondent Katrina Yu reports from Beijing.
Late this afternoon came Beijing's official response to North Korea's missile test, a foreign ministry spokesperson saying that a solemn complaint had been laid with North Korea's embassy.
中方坚持半岛无核化，反对朝鲜进行核岛开发的立场众所周知，朝鲜方面对此一直也是非常清楚。
The action took place on the eve of the BRICS summit, a major diplomatic gathering and showpiece for President Xi Jinping currently being held in the country's south. After the US suggested possible sanctions on countries doing trade with North Korea, today's spokesperson warned against it.
我们坚决不能接受的是，一方面为和平解决朝核问题付出艰辛的努力，另一方面自身的利益却遭受制裁 或者损害，这既不客观，也不公平。
While China accounts for 90% of all trade with North Korea, the US does roughly $600 billion worth of trade with China every year. The UN Security Council will shortly meet in New York, where possible further sanctions are likely to be discussed.
To Germany now, and Chancellor Angela Merkel has faced her main rival, Martin Schulz, in the only televised debate ahead of the September 24 election. It was the last major opportunity for the Social Democrats' leader to take back support ahead of the poll. But Ms Merkel is the firm favourite.
The only man standing between Angela Merkel and a fourth term as Chancellor, former European Parliament chief Martin Schulz. Homes and beer halls across Germany, millions tuned in for what was billed as a fiery face-off. But the rather civilised exchange prompted many to tune out.
It's boring because there's no big difference between those.
The rivals forming a consensus on Turkey's bid to join the European Union after Mr Schulz surprised Ms Merkel by vowing to stop the accession. After previously cautioning against such a move, Ms Merkel appeared to shift her position.
I was never in favour of Turkey joining the EU, and now I will reflect carefully on the options.
On immigration, arguably Ms Merkel's Achilles heel following the 2015 refugee crisis, Mr Schulz's main attack that she should have worked more closely with European allies. His assault on US President Donald Trump far more aggressive.
A man that posts atrocities with tweets for the world to see. A man that uses any means available, who slanders entire populations. A man that is not able to distance himself from a Nazi mob.
He argued the world should find a solution to the North Korea crisis without the US president. But Ms Merkel insisted America's input is needed. The debate ending without the hot topics of climate change and the future of the European Union being addressed. Mr Schulz's supporters disappointed, knowing it was do or die for his campaign. They wanted more aggression.
It's the only opportunity for Martin Schulz to attack her.
The consensus in Germany's beer halls echoing the exit polls, which predict another term re-election for Ms Merkel.
And SBS chief international correspondent Brett Mason was in Berlin as Ms Merkel and Mr Schulz went head-to-head.
This was sold as the big TV duel. Instead, it sounded more like a TV duet, the two candidates singing from the same songbook on all the big issues. What sets Germany apart from other European nations that have gone to the polls this year? For starters, there is no protagonist, no political hero or villain, depending on what side of the political spectrum you sit. We had Geert Wilders in Holland, Marine Le Pen in France. Here, Angela Merkel Merkel and Martin Schulz agree on the refugee crisis. They also agree on the future of the European Union. Another interesting difference to other European nations, this centre ground has been achieved not from the left side of politics veering further to the right, but by the right veering further to the left. That has opened the door for the Alternate for Germany party, the AfD. They are on track to win their first seats here in the Bundestag.
Brett Mason there. Well, New Zealanders go to the polls a day before Germany. And tonight, Labor leader Jacinda Ardern laid down a challenge to Australia in a leaders' debate. She threatened retaliation if Australia goes ahead with plans to make New Zealanders pay more for tertiary education, saying she would lock Australians out of New Zealand universities. Well, last month she rebuked Foreign Minister Julie Bishop after she accused Labor of undermining Australia over the citizenship row. In just 1 month as opposition leader, Miss Ardern has doubled Labor's poll rating heading into the September 23 election. He was asked to show up or shut up. Today, opposition leader Bill Shorten did just that, providing papers to prove he renounced his British citizenship. Well, now Labor's intensified its calls for Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce to stand aside until the High Court rules whether he was validly elected.
After weeks of resisting calls to do so, the opposition leader lays it on the table.
I offer this proof to the Parliament today to put an end to baseless allegations, not reward them.
It's a 2006 letter from the UK Home Office confirming Bill Shorten renounced any ties to Britain through his English-born father.
I accept that if I want to be elected Prime Minister, there cannot be any doubt about my constitutional eligibility.
Minutes earlier, Mr Shorten was goaded by the man in the job he wants.
He claims to have renounced his UK citizenship. Where's the proof?
A former Prime Minister flashing his own renunciation of Britishness also piled in.
Show your letter or shut up about Barnaby Joyce.
So having showed up, Labor isn't planning to shut up about Barnaby Joyce.
Be the strong leader you claim you are and make the Deputy Prime Minister stand aside.
Our legal advice is very clear and we're very confident that the High Court will confirm that when the matter is heard.
With Malcolm Turnbull's backing, Mr Joyce is ready to sweat this out until the High Court hearing in October.
You hold office until such time as death, or you resign, or the High Court finds otherwise.
The Senate also referred to the High Court, now former Brit, Nationals Deputy Fiona Nash.
I have indeed, since that time, renounced my citizenship.
And South Australian Nick Xenophon.
And if I ever was a British overseas citizen, I have, out of an abundance of caution, renounced it.
A fortnight away from Canberra for the Prime Minister, focusing on back-to-basics voter concerns, especially power prices, appears to have been energy well spent, according to today's news poll. Malcolm Turnbull scoring a big turnaround in his approval rating over Bill Shorten. Opening up a 17-point lead, which was whittled down to only 10 a fortnight ago, and clawing back a few more points in the primary vote, but still the 19th loss in a row. Daniela Retorto, SBS World News.
Kensington Palace in London has announced that the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge are expecting their third child. The news was released as the Duchess cancelled an engagement at a children's centre. As with her previous pregnancies, she is experiencing severe morning sickness. Well, coming up after the break, Barack Obama's advice to Donald Trump, the leaked letter to the president.
Neither of us looked after our marriage at the end, and we lost it.
In a television first hosted by Ray Martin, Can Eye Contact Alone Heal a Broken Relationship?
I love you.
The new series, Look Me in the Eye, starts Wednesday, 8:30 on SBS and On Demand.
Sometimes all you need is the smooth, creamy taste of Werther's Original Caramel to remind you that you're someone very special. Werther's Original.
The Triton GLS Sports Edition, $41,990 drive away with black fenders, 17-inch alloys, sports bar and nudge bar.
Now it's tough.
Mitsubishi Triton, built tough for work and play.
Finding out about my family on Ancestry
has been a real eye-opener. I love it. Get on Ancestry and have a look. It's fascinating.
Discover your story. Get started at Ancestry today.
Do a great deal more at Subaru this month with 5 years unlimited kilometre warranty and 5 years roadside assist on selected new models. Hurry, offer ends 30 September.
The joy of travelling the world is now on sale for 1 week only. For incredible deals on all international flights, be sure to book before midnight Sunday at Webjet.
Say hello to Kia Sportage GT line, packed with features like panoramic sunroof.
Supper time! The kitchen is the heart of the home.
You need to eat your healthy food first.
What we cook tells us a lot about who we are. Secrets of the Kitchen. Thursday, 8:35 on SBS and on demand.
Soldiers in Myanmar are denying fresh allegations of murder, rape and arson against members of the minority Rohingya Muslim community. About 73,000 people have fled to neighbouring Bangladesh over the past 10 days, trying to escape a brutal crackdown against Rohingya rebels.
A long and arduous path to freedom. Rohingya Muslims hike through the forests of Bangladesh trying to escape persecution. Their villages in Myanmar have been burnt to the ground and many have seen their relatives murdered.
My brother was killed. They shot him in the chest. I couldn't even dig him a proper grave. I somehow managed to bury him just by our house. And then I left.
Bangladesh has relaxed its borders, allowing more than 70,000 Rohingya to spill across. Another 80,000 are waiting to do the same, but camps are already nearing capacity. Back in Myanmar, relief agencies have withdrawn staff from camps in the city of Sitwe. The government accused them of helping Rohingya rebels who attacked police posts and an army base 10 days ago. Now many are running desperately low on food.
In this month, we received only half, not all.
In the capital Yangon, there were prayers for those killed in the attacks. The military crackdown in Rakhine State has seen hundreds of insurgents killed, which has deepened distrust between Myanmar's Buddhist majority and the Rohingya.
Rakhine is not a political plaything. The Rohingya are aliens from another world. The government should see terrorists as terrorists, and there should be no excuse for them.
But Rohingya say it's not just terrorists being killed.
Myanmar government has every right to fight the insurgency, every right. But they are not fighting insurgency. They are eliminating the population. Police and army has cordoned off the villages and they sent Buddhist Rakhine militia groups to attack Rohingya villages.
Stop banning Rohingya!
The crackdown has sparked protests from Canberra to Jakarta. Indonesia's president has even sent his foreign minister to Myanmar in a bid to halt the violence.
I and the people of Indonesia regret and condemn the violence that took place in Myanmar's Rakhine State. There needs to be real action and not just criticism.
The call follows the throwing of a petrol bomb into the Myanmar embassy in Jakarta. The impact of this bloody crackdown being felt across the region. Manny Tsigas, SBS World News.
Well, Donald Trump said he'd never release it to the media, but today the full content of Barack Obama's president-to-president parting Oval Office letter to Mr. Trump has been revealed. A copy of the last direct communication between the 44th and 45th US presidents has emerged, a letter revealed as gracious, conciliatory and cordial.
For months, Barack Obama openly questioned Donald Trump's fitness to be Commander-in-Chief. There was no sign of that in the farewell letter he signed, sealed and left for Mr. Trump in the Oval Office. The new president produced it on his inauguration day.
It was really very nice of him to do that, and we will cherish that. We will keep that, and we won't even tell the press what's in that letter.
But the letter, which has reportedly been shown to many at the White House, was leaked. The outgoing leader ensured his successor was appraised of the uncertainties and responsibilities of the top job. The opening set the tone. Congratulations on a remarkable run. Millions have placed their hopes in you, and all of us, regardless of party, should hope for expanded prosperity and security during your tenure. This is a unique office without a clear blueprint for success.
President Trump needed something like that. He probably wouldn't have given a similar letter to someone who had a lot of experience in Washington, D.C.
Barack Obama gives some policy advice, saying American leadership is indispensable. It's up to us, through action and example, to sustain the international order that's expanded steadily since the end of the Cold War.
And he moved forward to give some ideas with words of wisdom that I think should be listened to.
I would make the argument that President Trump has actually connected more and has been more involved in setting the international order than President Obama ever was.
President Obama wrote of safeguarding democracy, guardians of those democratic institutions and traditions like rule of law, separation of powers, equal protection and civil liberties.
Here we have a president who's attacked judges, who attacks the press. Those are all ways in which we limit the power of office holders. And I think he has done everything to ignore the advice.
Obama wished Trump all the best in a great adventure with rough patches. One rough patch Mr. Trump may partially avoid comes with his decision to give Congress 6 months to find a legislative way to embrace his decision to scrap an Obama-era program, which allows work permits to people who came to the US illegally as children. The so-called Dreamers legislation protects about 800,000 young Americans from deportation. The president's immigration stance has run into strong opposition, notably amongst senior Republicans. John Haysbell, SBS World News.
South Australia's new $2.3 billion Royal Adelaide Hospital has officially opened. And with the opening came the delicate task of moving the patients. 16 ambulances and an ambulance bus were put to work moving 130 patients. Rosalind Katsikas was the first to leave the old hospital to a room with a view at the new one.
Might want to go home when they fill it up.
All 350 patients are expected to be moved by Wednesday afternoon. The annual Islamic pilgrimage, the Hajj, has concluded in Saudi Arabia without major incident. Additional surveillance cameras were installed to manage the millions of pilgrims who descended on Islam's holy sites.
Tawaf al-Wada, the farewell cycling of the Kaaba, concludes the Hajj for more than 2.3 million Muslims. An obligatory once-in-a-lifetime 5-day pilgrimage for physically and financially able believers.
أتمنى لجميع الحجاج أن ينهوا مناسكهم في هذه المناسبة العظيمة وأن يعودوا لبلادهم إن شاء الله.
Among the pilgrims were 90,000 Iranian Muslims who were barred by their government from taking part last year following political tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia. This year, officials in the Control and Command Centre have been closely supervising the mass movement of people with more than 5,800 surveillance cameras and extra security personnel on the ground. All part of the billions of dollars of investment by the Saudi government to avoid a repeat of the 2015 disaster where more than 2,000 died in a crush.
هي نفس الاستعدادات التي تحدث كل عام يعني ممكن إدخال التقنية هذا العام كان أفضل من الأعوام السابقة لا شك وإنما هي نفس الاستعدادات التي تجري كل عام ويعني لابد أيضا من التواصل مع الحجاج بشكل جيد وبلغات مختلفة حتى يعني نتمكن من إيصال المعلومة الصحيحة لهم.
30,000 health workers were also deployed to administer aid to more than 400,000 people and successfully prevent an outbreak of cholera that hit neighbouring Yemen. With nearly 3/4 of the pilgrims now heading out of Saudi Arabia, what's left is the big clean-up that follows one of the world's biggest events. Laurie Lawira, SBS World News.
Coming up, the weather, and Walter Becker, the co-founder of Steely Dan, dies aged 67.
I was so malnourished and I was so miserable.
When trying to be healthy becomes unhealthy.
I was in complete denial.
I was on a watermelon diet.
I realised there was a serious problem.
Then on Dateline, is age just a state of mind?
How those in their 80s and 90s can give us a lesson in living.
It's a good time to be had at this age.
Insight, followed by Dateline. Tomorrow from 8:30 on SBS and On Demand.
From the 2016 Automotive Designer of the Year, Renault Koleos. Out of the ordinary design. Search Renault Koleos.
Your kid's cuddly blanket is also your dog's favourite? Never mind. Bosch washing machines with active oxygen remove up to 99.99% of germs and bacteria without additional chemicals, even at low temperatures. Bosch, invented for life.
Exclusive to Harvey Norman, the Bosch washing machine with active oxygen, ideally matched to the Bosch heat pump dryer. Available in-store and online now.
Toby Price knows tough. That's why he told his mate to get this new Triton for $32,990. Mitsubishi Triton. Built tough for work and play.
In a television first, can a former child soldier find remorse in the eyes of the man who tortured him? And through eye contact alone, can a 33-year-old marriage be saved? The new series, Look Me in the Eye, starts Wednesday, 8:30 on SBS and On Demand.
Can the free-scoring Reds find a way through Pep's £120 million backline?
The Premier League continues live, free and in HD.
Manchester City versus Liverpool, Saturday at 9 on SBS.
The finance figures now, when the Australian share market closed lower after North Korea's nuclear weapon test unnerved investors. Commonwealth Bank fell as it announced a board reshuffle. The major miners were mixed. Markets in Europe are down in early deals, and the Australian dollar is stronger against the greenback ahead of tomorrow's interest rate decision. To the weather now, and in the major centres, sunny in Cairns and Brisbane, sunny and early fog in Darwin. Windy but fine in Sydney, windy and showers in Canberra and Adelaide, showers too for Melbourne and Hobart. Looking further afield, fine in Nadi, cloudy in Christchurch and Noumea, rain elsewhere. In Southeast Asia, cloudy in Port Moresby, thunder in Bangkok and Singapore. Further north, showers in Hong Kong, rain for Hanoi and Manila. Heading west, fine and hot in Baghdad, hot and cloudy in Delhi, hot in Islamabad. To Europe, fine in Madrid, cloudy in Rome and Stockholm, rain in London and Warsaw. In Africa, fine and hot in Cairo, fine and mild in Johannesburg, cloud in Lagos, and in South America, cloud in Santiago, Lima and Asuncion, showers in Caracas and Bogota. For North America, fine in Vancouver and Chicago, partly cloudy in Denver, showers in Toronto and in Havana. Influential musician Walter Becker, the co-founder of Steely Dan, has died at the age of 67. The guitarist formed Steely Dan with college friend Donald Fagen. From 1972, they produced a catalogue of inventive, sophisticated music that connected with both rock and jazz fans. Steely Dan were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2001. That's the world this Monday. I'm Darren Mara.